The internet is absolutely buzzing, mate. People are voicing some serious frustration about the form of their favourite player. They're deeply concerned. Spotlight is glaringly on Bukayo Saka. What a horrendous outing from the franchise player. What's going on with him?
I entirely understand the depth of that concern, and truth be told, the supporters are completely justified. Bukayo's form, for the vast majority, frankly, is a poor optic for a franchise player. That specific tag denotes the absolute premium specimen within your ranks, the talisman. If your marquee talent is failing to meet the requisite standard, the supporters will inevitably start asking questions. That is simply the heavy responsibility that accompanies the title. Initially, I attributed this dip to a standard temporary loss of form. However, as I began to scrutinize his performances on a game-by-game basis, it became apparent that there might be far more underlying factors
Contributing to this prolonged dip.
Frankly, the more intently I observe Bukayo, the more apparent it becomes that Odegaard's absence is blunting his effectiveness far more than any of us. Without the Norwegian pulling the strings, Bukayo is a shadow of his former self. He looks utterly isolated out on that right flank. To be perfectly honest, if anything, the dependency flows in the opposite direction. That intricate triangular interplay between Ben White, Odegaard, and Saka was evidently far more foundational to Bukayo's output than we gave it credit for. It is a stark testament to Odegaard's sheer indispensability to this Arsenal system. Nevertheless, as I stressed earlier, we must unequivocally back him through this barren spell. He possesses the immense mental fortitude to weather this storm and emerge even sharper, but time is very much of the essence. We need that resurgence in the next handful of fixtures, because a title run-in simply demands him at his absolute highest form. He's our star player.
But mate, how do we get him back to his best? Because if there's one bloke we desperately need for the run-in, he's top of the list. He's the star player.
I believe we need to shine a spotlight on the fixtures where he has excelled this season in the absence of Odegaard, and strictly analyse his role and positioning. From a tactical standpoint, he's flourished in the matches where he's operated more centrally. It's glaringly obvious this isn't his vintage season, and so Arteta must manufacture ways to simplify the game for him. Currently, executing even basic tasks looks arduous.
Deploying him as a touchline winger isn't the solution. Taking on fullbacks currently looks like a mammoth task for him. Arteta should bring Saka centrally,
closer to the critical action zones, rather than leaving him isolated out wide. Though I might be wrong, but from my point of view, that's the way I see it.
Hold on, are you saying Saka should play as the 10 instead of Eze? Don't you think it might shift the balance of our gameplay in the final third?
Yeah.
What about Noni? The lad is seriously knocking on the door. Why aren't we chucking him in there instead of Saka till Odegaard returns from injury?
Listen, it would be a gross injustice to say Madueke hasn't earned that spot ahead of Saka based on recent form. He absolutely has. Even at the Bay Arena, didn't look like a side deserving of a point until Noni came on, completely changed the rhythm, and we finally started threatening down that right channel. But my perspective is this: deploying them both together makes us incredibly unpredictable. They can seamlessly interchange role, and depending on the game state. Eze, on the other hand, can easily be shifted out to the left flank. Saka leads the press far more effectively than Eze, and his ball retention in tight central areas could be vital. Moving him closer to the action eases his burden. Personally, I'd have Saka and Eze on the pitch. And together, Saka is not literally playing as a 10. We switch to LCM and RCM. Saka then moves to the right interior. It makes our offensive play infinitely more fluid. The major challenges of this formation are the changes on the left side. Eze tends to struggle in the left interior. So if we are to move Eze to the left flank, that means Lewis Skelly comes in as LCM. Zubimendi can rest for a couple of games to get his sharpness back.
That's a brilliant shout, mate. But do you honestly reckon the gaffer is ready to make a call that bold? Because let's face it, Arteta, we all know,
is notoriously pragmatic when it comes to tinkering with his starting 11, especially with a certain untouchable player, Zubimendi in particular.
From a practical standpoint, we possess the requisite depth within this squad to tinker with the system until we yield the optimal result. In my view, you can absolutely tweak the shape from the midfield straight through to the final third. The only area you simply cannot disrupt is the defensive unit. They are the absolute bedrock of the team. But from the central midfield to the front line, you can rotate and refine on a game-by-game basis to extract maximum value. You don't acquire players of that caliber merely to act as bench cover. They were brought in to genuinely compete against each other for starting berth. At present, we are grinding out ugly wins. It's a vital trait, but relying on that sheer grit too heavily is a recipe for disaster. I am certain Arteta is acutely aware of this and will make the necessary tactical calls when he deems fit. But to label any player outside of Gabriel, Saliba or Declan as untouchable, I sincerely doubt the manager views his squad hierarchy in that manner.
That's a brilliant observation, actually.
Let's look at the wider picture for a second. Have you got any idea why the Premier League sides are suddenly struggling in the knockouts? They were flying in the group stages. We saw Arsenal scrape a point, whilst both City and Chelsea got utterly obliterated.
It's a simple equation of fixture congestion. The other European leagues enjoyed a winter break. The French authorities are even rescheduling domestic fixtures to keep their European representatives fresh. In the Premier League, it's the exact opposite. However, as the old adage goes, you can't have your cake and eat it. The Premier League is the wealthiest league on the planet. Obscene amounts of television money are pumped specifically to equip them for this exact scenario. They are literally paid to fortify their squads. So rather than bemoaning the schedule from now, until doomsday, clubs need to recruit better to cope. Complaining changes nothing. The elite must simply adapt. They are not playing with their money.
Spot on. The league's paid them handsomely to bolster the ranks. Adapt or die, really. Right, let's have a quick word about Manchester City's absolute humbling at the Bernabeu at the hands of Real Madrid. Do you reckon that demolition job is going to bleed into their league form?
It depends on their mental fortitude and the team they are facing next in their domestic fixture. But the sheer manner in which Madrid dismantled them, it probably might pile immense psychological pressure onto Pep's shoulders. They will be desperate to rest key personnel this weekend to remain somewhat fresh for the return leg, clinging to the hope of springing a miraculous comeback. Ultimately, it hinges on the caliber of their weekend opposition. I believe they are facing West Ham this weekend. Strictly on paper, even a heavily rotated City side should dispatch them with relative ease. However, West Ham are firmly entrenched in a relegation zone. When a team shifts into pure survival mode, they are capable of producing the extraordinary.
Too right, mate. Anything can happen when a team is scrapping for their lives. We saw Nottingham Forest nick that shock draw at the Etihad not too long ago. Let me put you on the spot then. If you had a magic wand, would you rather see City turn it around against Madrid and progress, or crash out of Europe right now? Which scenario are you taking?
That is a remarkably complex dilemma. Both outcomes present distinct tactical advantages. If they crash out at this juncture, it removes a monumental adversary from our path should we navigate our way to the final. Conversely, an early exit does not serve our domestic interest. It would afford them the luxury of focusing entirely on the Premier League whilst we continue to juggle European commitments. That could play perfectly into their hands. The second option, City advancing, means they would likely face Bayern Munich next. That is another grueling heavyweight tie that would entirely deplete their physical reserves. It would inadvertently favour our title charge, forcing them into further heavy rotation for league games. Frankly, considering they arguably do not possess the sheer squad depth we currently boast, I would opt for the latter. Let them advance purely because the probability of Bayern eliminating them in the later stages remains incredibly high, all whilst exhausting them on the domestic front.
You're not wrong there. It's all about playing the long game, isn't it? Right, let's get straight into it. Another underwhelming shift from Arsenal, but they've managed to scrape a late draw at Bayer Leverkusen, though we still have the edge with a point ahead of the return leg. What did you make of that performance down at the Bay Arena, mate?
Look, if we're being honest, the performance wasn't anything to write home about. The overwhelming positive, however, is that we emerged with a point. However, it allows us to take the tie back to the Emirates and kill the game off there. Naturally, we wanted the job done and dusted in the first leg, but you have to afford Leverkusen their due credit. They came with a meticulous plan and executed it to the absolute letter. As I've always maintained, every single side in the Champions League knockout phase works incredibly hard and deserves their place. Underestimating any opponent at this level
is disastrous. We saw exactly that with Liverpool against Galatasaray. You have to take every minute seriously. Every team deserves to be there, yeah? It's a stark reminder not to take any fixture lightly. Right, let's pivot back to the Premier League. This weekend, it's Everton. At the Emirates, a win edges us closer to dreamland. But Everton are on a good run as well, 8th on the EPL table. How are you approaching this one?
We are actually engaged in a thorough tactical discourse regarding all of this within our membership group as we speak. If you have not yet joined us, and I urge you to do so by clicking the link in the comments section. Make no mistake, Everton are a formidable side. They demand absolute attention to detail.